Grace, man.
What's up?
Oh, Tony's gonna.
Oh,
I think we should change his name to Boney or Brony. Brony.
Of all the ideas that you've had over the years, this one is the worst.
If you changed it to Brony and go to a Brony party.
I don't even know what that is.
I don't know if I want to know what that is.
Bronies are adults, guys, usually guys, who share an affinity for My Little Pony.
How do you know about this?
This is Epic Battle Cry Skirmish 203, the news of August!
Hello and welcome to Epic Battle Cry. This is the place where we cut through the crap to bring you the real deal in the gaming industry today. I'm your host, Tony Grice, and with me, as always, is Brent Adams and Daniel Kaiser. Brent, how you doing this week, man?
What's up, my trekkers of torment, my crusaders of carnage? How art thou?
Good.
Okay.
Trekkers and crusaders. I always envision Tony as a crusader. You know, just out there crusading around, cruising the crusade.
You understand that crusaders and people who drive aimlessly around in their cars because they just got their license are two different things, right?
Yeah.
Oddly enough, that is exactly what I just was doing. I just got my license.
I stand corrected.
Yeah. Well,
Might have something to do with a quest. These
yes.
professions might have something to do with
there
the
you
quest.
go. Yeah, that ties in nicely. After all,
See, gotta go to
BK,
second
I'm
base
on a
for it.
quest to get this podcast rolling. How's your week going?
it's good. TG in 3D. You know, in light of the Alex Rodriguez situation and the fact that he's been suspended 211 games, which I'm pretty sure the number 211 is actually higher than his batting average has been as of late. I thought it would be a good time for me to just come clean about all the doping that happens in the world of video game hosting.
That's right.
You know, I know obviously people are wondering why I'm so ripped and so
Isn't doping
cut.
supposed to improve performance?
So I'm here to come clean with the the mean behind the scenes, everything that happens in the world of gaming. All the guys and I have been basically influenced, but our bodies are just ripped with steroids, and we need to change it. We need to get the game clean. We need to get it clean up gaming. That's my new mantra. So hopefully people will support me in my rehabilitation.
Oh,
You moved to the wrong fucking city for this agenda.
That's true.
all right, guys. Well, we have plenty of stories to run through, so let's go ahead and run through the gauntlet. All right, guys, we're here in the gauntlet, and the first bit of news up is the announcement that the developers from Black Powder Games, makers of the original Fear title, have unveiled a new game. Brent, what's this new game?
Yes, this is a very interesting, very evocative title called Betrayer.
Yeah.
And the Seattle-based indie studio has been developing this internally, and it is a quote. It is described as a quote eerie and atmospheric first-person action-adventure game for the PC.
Nice.
This is what creative director Greg Hubbard had to say, or maybe it's Hubbard, I don't know. But he says, we wanted to get back to crafting games more intuitively. There's a sense of discovery and excitement when you navigate by instinct rather than by market research, and you open yourself up to opportunities that arise during development.
Which
So
translates
here-
to you make it black and white.
and red.
And
Come on.
red. Yes,
Come
and
on.
red.
There's some red in there too.
Sure, yes.
So this is the skinny on the game. It is described as such. Betrayer washes you ashore in the New World in 1604, where you're expecting to join a
big deal.
struggling English colony on the Virginia coast.
Okay.
Instead, you find only ghosts and mysteries in a land drained of color and life. You'll build up an arsenal of weaponry, including muskets, crossbows, and throwing axes, collecting untold treasures along the way. Chart your own course through an untamed wilderness teeming with danger and discovery as you search for survivors and unravel the colony's many mysteries, including the identity of the strange silent woman in red who helps from afar. So, to me, this immediately sort of invokes notions of the Roanoke colony and the quasi mystery surrounding its disappearance and all of that. So definitely picking a really kind of unique setting and time for their game territory that's not been all that well trodden so far. What do you guys think, based on what you've heard and based on the little bit we've seen as far as the trailer? What do you guys think about this?
So Black Powder is a newly formed studio by ex-Monolith developers, and this is the gang that brought us the original Fear, which I think out of that franchise, the original is most highly regarded and basically been the thing that the sequels have kind of been built upon the back of, because, I think people who follow Fear think it's kind of gone downhill for the most part, but the original is very highly regarded. So these guys definitely have the chops to make a great game. And as far as what we're seeing so far, as you're saying, unique. It's something interesting. I like the weaponry that's involved. I think it has a unique setting, like you were talking about. And for them to be bold with the art style like this too is pretty compelling as well. So I think that all the signs right out of the gate point to this being something to definitely watch, especially if you like the original Fear. But even if you didn't, it might offer something compelling with the weaponry, and also just the story seems kind of intriguing. So I definitely, as soon as posted a story about this one's on my watch list now, and let's just hope that we don't get betrayed by their lack of ability to fulfill our expectations.
No, you had to search for a way to tie it in.
That was a long way around, buddy. I got to tell you.
I do kind of fear that, like, these guys, I don't know, like, it's almost
I get what you did there. You fear, yeah.
No, I did not do that, damn it. I did not. Stop it.
Hey, it's contagious.
So I am afraid, I have no other way to say this now. Anyway, that the best days are behind these guys. Like, I just, kind of the No One Lives Forever franchise, I think it was like maybe some of their earliest stuff, was great. Like, told some really cool stories, very funny. Had a great story. The original Fear was I think pretty highly regarded from most people that played it. And then really ever since then, like really about from Fear 2 on, like I don't know that I've really seen or heard much of them, or that anybody really kind of cares what they're doing these days. So I don't know. This does look interesting. I almost am afraid it's a little too odd, like the graphic style they've gone with. Like I'm almost afraid it's gonna be a little too. I don't know, off-putting maybe to some audiences. They'll be like, it looks kind of interesting, but I mean,
not mainstream
really, it's in black
enough.
and white the whole time? Like, I don't know.
Well, but we don't know that. Maybe it's just in black and white at the beginning, and I don't know. Who knows? But
or
I like
the whole trailer.
Or possibly the whole trailer is great.
At least it's not brown and green. I mean, give them credit where credit's due.
No, I see what you're saying. though. It's been a while, so they'll have to kind of reprove themselves, I guess. But especially with a new IP. But kudos for having the balls to do that, though. I guess on some level. So should be interesting to see how it turns out.
I don't know if that I've always ever understood that you give kudos for somebody for just trying something. I mean, I can just try sticking my finger into like a electric socket or whatever. But
oh no,
I feel like you should kudos for that.
Loads of people have tried that before you, though.
Yeah,
that's true. Very fun. All right, so next up we have some maybe sad news, I guess, for All Stars Battle Royale fans out there.
Again.
DK, DK, what can you tell us about this? About the happenings around the PlayStation All-Star Battle Royale?
It's basically done. We found out this past week that PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale has received its last pieces of DLC for character and environment content. So there will be no more additions to the game. Obviously, a title of this nature, a mascot brawler for Sony that was promised to be the next big thing, the evolution of Super Smash Brothers, but in the Sony camp has proven to be underwhelming, I think, is kind of the word that most people would associate with this project. But here we are. A lot of times projects like this do live on far after their launch and accumulate an audience through characters. I remember having the conversation with you guys about them being able to win over new audiences on a consistent basis based on the characters and environments that they could bring to the table in order to tie in everything that they had at Sony. Perhaps they felt that their roster of things to pull from has run its course. They're not dealing with a 20-year-old kind of vault like Nintendo is or whatever, but they're dealing with something a little smaller. But at the same time, we've seen a lot of classic characters in there, but it would appear at this point that the project is basically dead. If you haven't already been a fan, and maybe at this point you could just enjoy it for what is already there.
Let me ask you: is it dead or is it just done? Like it's done with what it was intending to do? I mean, how many times do we hear about when somebody finally stops releasing DLC for a game? Usually they don't even bother announcing it; they just kind of let it fade away.
But in this case, I really do think that it's kind of like Sony throwing in the towel and saying, "Look, we get it. It was a terrible idea. We're going to stop now." I mean, maybe I'm reading too much into it. I don't know.
I feel like you might be, but you might also be right. I don't know.
I get your point, Tony, but every game is a different scenario. So, like, if it's like a single player game and they release like 2 bits of story-driven DLC, and then they're like, "We're done," that's one thing. But when you're looking at like a fighter of this nature on a platform like the PlayStation, and
name the last time
you
heard an update on the future of DLC for any other fighting game. I mean, they always tell you what's coming up next, but then but once they're done, they don't tell you like, okay, by the way, we're not releasing any more for this game. Yeah, they don't ever tell you that. So that's why I do think this is kind of odd.
That's true. I mean, we very rarely get like news reports about like, okay, development on this game is officially over. I mean, it happens. It
does, but it's pretty rare. Like, for instance, the new Street Fighter is Ultra Street Fighter, which is coming out like sometime next year, I believe. And they just kind of announced that. They didn't like announce, okay, so first off, before we go any further, we're not making any more shit for Super Street Fighter 4. Like they didn't say that. They just kind of said, hey, here's our next thing.
And I think that's kind of to the point, though. I think a lot of people had never felt the level. Why this is news is because I think a lot of people were still waiting for the game to get better through characters, through environments, and them kind of, as Brent said, throwing in the towel is a little bit of evidence that this project might not have reached at this stage. Contrast it with something like Mortal Kombat. They make a big what to do about all the new characters coming out for it, the latest Mortal Kombat, and they've been rather successful with that. And if they just hit the switch at one point and don't do it, that project feels like a success already because of what they've done with the reboot and sales figures and everything else. Whereas I think people were waiting still for this one to kind of hit that mark, and this is kind of indicative of the fact that it's not going to get any better.
I think that might be. I mean, like, who really thought that something drastically was going to change between like the last bit of DLC and now? I mean, did they think some huge revamp of the game was going to come? Because I mean, I don't know. To me, this just seems sort of like non-news. I mean, I will admit, I don't think that the series.
But then again, it is August, so.
It is August, yeah. That's why I think it's just
August, turning non-news into news.
Yeah. But they do mention a patch, I guess, is coming out later this year. Is that what they said?
There's another costume pack
to rebalance or something like that. And they're going to unlock a lot of the that was only pre-order only stuff at the end of the year. So, I think that's, I don't know, for people that might want to pick it up used or cheaply or something down the road.
Yeah.
All right, so next up we have news of another title that has actually... we were hoping to maybe see sooner than this, but it looks like it's been pushed back a little bit further. Wolfenstein: The New Order. Brent, when can we look to maybe get our hands on this?
As of right now, Bethesda has let us know that The New Order is now set to ship in 2014 on all platforms. Of course, the reason behind this is the de facto more time for polishing. We have gotten... another look at a little bit of gameplay from New Order, and we found out some more details about what they're hoping to accomplish with the game. As far as the game kind of being hurt by delays, which is usually the angle we take from this. Maybe I'm just jaded and I just assumed it's like, oh yeah, that's good. It'll be great when it comes out in 2015. Maybe I just assume that delays are always going to happen now, because I don't find myself too shocked or upset by this.
No, I think one of the big things with this title was when it was announced, it was kind of a relatively short time until the proposed launch date. So the fact this feels more organic to kind of when it was announced. I mean, obviously they've been working on it for a while, but obviously you're dealing with a franchise here that is near and dear to a lot of people, and they're looking to kind of revitalize it. We've seen a lot of franchises get revitalized lately, and they're hoping that this one will be able to have some a resurgence of its own. From what we've seen thus far, it seems compelling. It seems like it's on board. The kind of the odd thing for me is that it's focused on the single player. I think that's great, but when you're looking at a franchise that basically is responsible for establishing the first person shooter genre, it's a little odd, obviously, to not have a multiplayer component. They're focusing on the single player story here. So but anyway, the game seems intriguing. I think I see a lot of comments, people feeling underwhelmed again by what they see thus far, and I think Bethesda feels that and really wants to make this game shine. This might be a case of them kind of showing too much too early and going back a little bit to the drawing board too, like Pete Hines from Bethesda, good old Petey Pete as I call him when we hang out in person. It gets awkward. Felt it deserved some additional time for polish, as you mentioned, Brent. So polish it they need to do. So let's see what happens, and hopefully this will turn out for the best for everybody involved. We would rather have a complete game, a good game that the developer and publisher are satisfied with, than to have something rushed just for the sake of having it.
Speaking of polishing, one question you might ask PDP. What I'm curious to know, and maybe this is where you were going to go, Tony, I don't know, but don't you think that there's a danger, like in these long-standing franchises that have spanned a really long time and have had multiple entries, and people have had like kind of a long time, to associate themselves with the game and its its story or whatever? Mm-hmm. Isn't there kind of a danger of people kind of reaching a point where they're like, I feel like I've kind of seen everything that this property has to offer? Like, isn't there a point like where it's just sort of like saturation, where it's like there's only so many kind of like Nazi/mech games I can play?
I don't know. I think it depends.
That doesn't hold true for like zombie games or anything. I mean, like, I think it just depends on how good the game is. That's a really hot trend right now. That's a really hot trend right now. But I mean, it can't last forever. No trend does.
Next trend: unicorns. Write it down. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah. I can't find a pen. I'm sorry.
Oh, goodness. Well, in other Wolfenstein news, the team behind Wolfenstein 3D announced that there will be no more DLC for characters or levels. So, last but not least, of course, QuakeCon has been going on. It's where some of this news has been coming out of.
Yeah.
But a little bit of news around Rage. Yeah, if you don't remember it, that was the last really big id franchise that was dropped. DK, is the franchise dead, or are we going to maybe see another Rage at some point?
It's not dead, TG in 3D. In fact, Mr. Tim Willits, who I always enjoy interviewing, mainly because he's shorter than me, spoke at QuakeCon in Dallas about the future of the Rage franchise, and stated specifically that the franchise is not dead, that they are very proud of what they did and the universe that they built, and in fact that when they were developing the game, he said that they designed it in such a way that it would be easy to step back into, and some of the ideas, some of the things that surfaced within Rage, the team at id is very proud of, and also that game helped them establish the id Tech 5 engine, which they are utilizing not just obviously on Rage, but for a lot of their projects moving forward onto next gen consoles. So he was reiterating the importance of what that project did. It got good reviews. It got mixed reviews. I think some people loved it. Some people didn't really care for it all that much. I think the hype was so high going into it that expectations on behalf of fans ultimately impacted the perception of the title. But it'd be interesting to see if they did bring back Rage and with a bona fide sequel or a spin-off or something like that. What did you guys think of the original title, if you did play it, or just your perception of it from afar? And do you think it's worth bringing back for id, or should they just focus on other things that they've already got established that they know there's a big install base, a fan install base for?
Again, you're kind of going back to what I was just saying with Wolfenstein. I'm just starting to ask myself, has the post-apocalyptic genre sort of played itself out at this point? I mean, is there really anything new to kind of be gleaned from this? People are kind of excited about Mad Max, but I mean, that's really more about it, kind of being a sort of a cult favorite property. Yeah. That's that's coming to video games. But again, I got to ask the question: it's like, do we really need another 50 Shades of Brown post-apocalyptic first-person shooter.
Oh, and I think it's how you do it.
I mean, but I don't know that. I think I definitely get where you're going, and I think there is something to it. But I also think that it has. I mean, let's be honest. There's always going to be these sorts of games. There have always been these sorts of games that kind of fall on one sort of key thing that sort of sets up their world or whatever. And it just, to me, it's whether the game is good, or maybe even not. Even good maybe isn't the right word, but just does something different enough to stand out.
Is this doing something different enough to stand out in your opinion?
And exactly, I don't think so. I mean, like, it's the game looks good. I actually didn't play it until just recently. I got it on the Steam Summer Sale, and it looks good. It plays well. Nothing really, especially interesting or exciting about it, to be brutally honest with you. Which I actually think goes more or less to like the actual, kind of where the game is, happening at, but more in just like the history of the sort of people behind it. I mean, to be brutally honest with you, I don't feel like the last couple of Dooms or Quakes or Rage, I don't know, for whatever reason, id sort of feels like a company sort of trapped in time. Their technology kind of goes on and gets better and better and better, but the games they put out, I still feel like you look at like, what was the last Quake 4, I guess. That came out a few, it's been I guess a couple years now, but early in this last generation of consoles, and just to me it felt like more of the same in the kind of early, just with better tech. And that is the one thing I will give id Software is, I mean, their engines look very, very good, and they come up with, especially in the lighting kind of field, they come up with like some really good kind of new technology. But I think that their design is really stuck in early 1990s.
I see what you're saying, and I would just say this. I feel like id bears the brunt of the responsibility, or at least they feel like they feel the weight of advancing first-person shooters, since they're obviously tied with all the franchises that you mentioned to the history of this genre. And I feel that possibly when they're looking at tech advancements and all the things that, like, Rage under the hood does a lot of impressive things. But I think, maybe id is the company that kind of introduces all these tools and does all this stuff, but then it's other companies who kind of go out and actually kind of start to innovate and do things within the genre, where they're very focused on kind of showing what is possible. Other people are maybe focused on what's a little more polished, or what is going to be more marketable or reach a wider audience. I kind of get that vibe from them,
I agree that I do think that was in the past. I think that has been. I think a lot of people use their engines, but I don't know that it seems like it's gone definitely more towards, like, say, the Unreal Engine, and they have created an engine that I think has been used by a much wider group of people to do many different things. More than just first-person shooters. They've been to design lots of different games, and I don't know. I feel like they're sort of trying to keep up in a world I sort of feel like it's passing them by a little bit.
Yeah. I see your point, but at least with this story, we understand that they're not going to rage quit anytime soon.
Oh. Let's go ahead and call that 150.
Daniel, you were gonna like single-handedly.
You're gonna save a lot of
You're gonna
children's
single-handedly
lives.
feed all of Africa by the end of this episode. All right, guys, well, we are in the main topic this week, and we're going to talk a little bit about massively multiplayer online gaming.
Yay!
Because, as you know,
Is it
we
August
are
again?
all
Oh,
three
yeah, it is
experts on
August
this
again.
subject.
It's August. Because it's August.
In all seriousness, though, we did have a pretty awesome reveal, at least, kind of early details, for the new EverQuest, which is being called EverQuest Next. And that kind of got us thinking about, what is the next thing coming down the pipe?
Putting the next after EverQuest, instead of calling it the next EverQuest, EverQuest Next.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, DK, you want to kind of take us down what we think might be kind of coming down the pipe?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I think this leads to a larger conversation. We found out last week more about EverQuest Next, which is the upcoming MMO, obviously, from Sony Online Entertainment. And they're really looking to change the game with what this title is bringing to the table. Not just for EverQuest fans. Obviously, there's no real understating of what EverQuest, the franchise, has meant to this this genre, basically, like we were talking about with it in their games, helped establish it with EverQuest. But it's time for a new generation, and EverQuest Next is that evolution. They did announce the game itself, and very intriguing enough, they announced a project called EverQuest Next Landmark, which is coming this winter, that basically is going to allow people to help build the game. It's this free-to-play MMO version of the game where, construction is at the core and allows people to kind of, develop environments and have fun tinkering around with the world, and certain assets that are created by the community will be put to use and employed within the actual game of EverQuest Next. So, but beyond that, they're really looking to kind of do a bunch of different things that are new to the genre: destructible environments, permanent change, emergent AI, multi-classing, being able to choose from 40 different classes and professions and whatnot, and kind of have your character evolving. So, I wanted this week to get everyone's thoughts on this announcement. We saw some first footage of it. We've seen some screams. The art style looks pretty intriguing. But more importantly, kind of talk about this once mighty genre and its now, kind of stale existence that has happened, especially in light of, what everyone thought was going to be a gigantic success with Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, Star Wars The Old Republic, and basically, kind of the fading fascination with World of Warcraft. It seems to me that this genre, massively multiplayer online games, needs to innovate more than any other genre in order to retain its relevance in the gaming industry. Would you guys agree with that statement? And are the things that EverQuest Next is presenting, are those the things that this genre needs in order to experience a defined reboot?
I don't know if MMOs have to necessarily innovate more than anything else. But I certainly agree that they need to innovate as much as anything else needs to. And as far as where EverQuest is going, I think we're seeing, and we talked about this years ago, probably in relation to SWTOR actually, but we talked about our kind of idea that the MMO space was not likely to just sort of shift between something like World of Warcraft and then like another amazingly big MMO, but it was likely to fracture. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what's happened. And the thing that's good about that is it's opened up all of these doors for innovation from smaller developers, from upstarts, from people doing really different things in the space. And while I do think that EverQuest is innovating here, the fact of the matter is that in some form or fashion, all of the things they're kind of talking about do exist in other games. Maybe not put together in exactly this combination, but certainly I am intrigued by the idea of this kind of quasi sandbox thing. I mean, that's going to be within reason.
Sure.
The tools are going to limit you to things that will be pertinent to the game world, but certainly the idea of a persistent world in which things that players can create or destroy are going to be persistent, throughout your game experience. That's cool. The ability to mix classes and not be tied into the class that you choose at the beginning of the game and only the skills that that class has available, but the idea that you're going to be able to advance, you're going to be able to combine things from different classes. That's cool. But again, these are things that are happening in other games. I wonder about they talk about some of the more subtle aspects, such as their sort of NPC AI, and how they're talking about that NPCs are going to be guided based on kind of like preferences, like a pack of ogres or something. That the NPCs aren't just about you get to a certain geographical location that's inside their radius to attack, but actually they're after gold, which means that they might go after you if you're sporting, I presume if you're sporting like really swank armor, a lot of swag and stuff, they might perceive, that person's going to have more gold than this person over here that's got, kind of shoddy looking equipment and stuff like that. So those kinds of things are interesting, but whether or not they really, but ultimately it's like, all right, well, but the ogres are still going to attack you, right? So ultimately, does it lead to a substantially different sort of play experience? And I don't know. I like the idea of all the things they're talking about. I'm not the biggest fan of MMOs. SWTOR is the only one I've played with any regularity and to any depth, but I kind of have an appreciation for the genre enough now that I can see the appeal in what they're talking about. But whether or not they're really going to stand out amongst the crowd with all of the other people that have kind of come to this space in the past few years, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do agree. I kind of agree with everything you just said, Brent. The thing you said, though, to begin with, was that they have to evolve. And I don't know that there's something about MMOs that they have to be very careful, I think, when they evolve. They've got such a underlying sort of infrastructure of all these things that happen that when they do sort of hit that right balance, that's when you have something like frankly, that's when you have something like a World of Warcraft, which just struck like, I think, this balance that was sweet enough, that got enough people in, that kept enough people playing for a long enough period of time. Now, granted, a lot of people say they're shedding users by the millions these days, and it's totally legit. That's right, but at the same time, yeah, like in the last 2 years, I think it's dropped something like 6 or 7 million subscribers. So
wow.
It's been drastic.
Admittedly though, they've got a lot of subscribers to shed.
Sure.
Well, so. but no, I think that's like a third or 40%. It's actually been quite a bit, because in all fairness, I don't play very many MMOs, but the only one I ever played with any kind of time was World of Warcraft, and I'm sure it's because it was the most popular one and had the most people playing and was the most likely to have someone want me to kind of jump in and play with them. And the thing that I was always so frustrated by was it was the kind of carrot in front of you. They had the perfect balance of just putting something just barely in front of you to keep you going, and every time you'd get to this one point, you'd say, well, I might as well just go to the next thing.
Yeah.
And you get there and you're like, well, I might as well just they had the perfect balance of that. And if you do anything too drastic to your, whether it be the story that you're in, the world that you're in, whatever it is, there's always a chance of you sort of disrupting that balance that you've created. But now I would say,
and Tony's a huge fan of things dangling in front of his face. So
exactly. So if you do kind of when people do leave some of these larger monoliths like World of Warcraft, and they do splinter off, I think even within those different splinters, they all do something different, but they still have to be really careful of keeping kind of their keeping the structure happy, keeping them in the world they want to be in, because you only have 2 or 3 or 4 of these huge worlds that have these players that continually come to them.
Yeah.
You can't change anything too drastically too quickly. I do think some of the things hearing about coming from EverQuest Next. I almost said the next EverQuest,
Yeah.
Which would be
which would have
totally
been
wrong.
crazy.
The next EverQuest
Yes.
called EverQuest Next.
Which I do like some of the things like the permanent damage in the worlds, there might be a castle or something that you tear, you decimate and you tear down, and until someone rebuilds it or builds another one somewhere else, it's
gone.
It stays that way. Well, and I don't know exactly how that's going to work in the game, but I like the idea.
I think that would definitely lend a sense of history to the play experience, and that continuity. I think could really be a great tool for immersion.
And plays into the whole having different worlds. That's almost like a Minecraft game built in. If they can build up things within the game. Yeah. You could have so many. You could make so many different types.
Okay for Minecraft.
Yeah, really. Exactly.
I was just going to say one of the interesting things, and the reason why it's intriguing to me about them having to innovate within this genre is because this genre does have a different component than others. If you're looking at the sports gaming genre, or the racing genre, or the first person shooters, or really anything else aside from MMOs, there's the expectation that all you have to do is, it's not easy, but you have to make a great game, and the game will sell, and it's expected that you'll make revenue and do what you need to do. But with this genre, you look at EverQuest when it first released, a subscription-based model. Now this is free to play. I think a lot of this of success of MMOs is not just creating a great game, but finding the right fit for the model in which you release it, because expectations are all over the map. So free free to play has been, the way to go. But then when do you charge? What do you charge for? There's so many more decisions, and it seems like such a more painstakingly detailed process to create something that would be successful, that, even if you have a great game at the core, if you don't, in this genre, if you don't release it right and you don't market it right, then you're not going to be successful. So how do you guys think that's going to impact EverQuest? I mean, they're yet to announce details of how that's all going to happen, but I do think that they did a very interesting thing in releasing the Landmark thing and getting people involved early and creating that kind of, you're building the game with us. They also have the roundtable discussion thing, and so they're involving people in this project from the word go, which I think is a very compelling way to go about this process.
I agree with that, and I think that we were kind of laughing about Minecraft, but I mean, Minecraft's no laughing matter.
Yeah.
Because obviously they found some formula that really, really dialed in, this compelling urge in people to create. And if a game like EverQuest can sort of elicit that specific kind of response from people, in addition to the base need to kind of play their MMO, that can be a very potent combination, I think, because you have this emerging situation where not only are you offering a compelling game experience with a property that's got sufficient history and that has a fan base, but you're also talking about something where people are actually vested in what happens in the world and actually having a hand in changing that. In players themselves become a value add, as opposed to it's just, you need lots of players in the game so that, people can group up and, go tackle instances together, as opposed to that. Everybody that's contributing to the game, ends up being a value add proposition for everybody else who's playing the game. Mm-hmm. And that's, that's cool. I mean, if it works, if people are engaged by what they're offering, that could be a really good thing. The potential's certainly there, but I agree. I think leading with the Landmark tool is a good way of leading into that and of just getting people really oriented with the idea that this is a game that the players are really going to help the developers in building and evolving.
Yep.
Whatever you do, for the love of God, though, don't download their mobile app.
Does it suck?
It's worthless. Like, it sounds really cool. Like, it's like, oh, you can download this mobile app, and there's like mini quests and like little mini games and adventures you can do that will, that'll unlock things related to the main game. I was like, oh, that sounds like really cool. That sounds like the mobile app we've been waiting for. But when they say mini quests, what they actually mean is spamming Facebook. So just bear that in mind.
Spamming face. All right, guys, well, we are near the end of this week's skirmish, but first we have our battle cries of the week, and we'll start off with my battle cry, which is actually a battle cry out to a friend of mine who is just starting his own podcast.
Wow.
And the name of this podcast is The Unknown Emote.
Okay.
So if you go to YouTube, check out The Unknown Emote, and I think it's actually kind of pertinent with the story we just talked about with the what's next for MMOs. His podcast is basically, and he does it with two other guys, but they talk all about MMOs. No, not at all. They talk about massively multiplayer online games such as Rift, which actually Rift is one of the first games they talk about, and with each episode, I believe their attempt is going to be to talk about each one of the different MMOs. I think they're going to at some point, I'm sure, talk about WoW. I'm sure sometime they'll talk about. What was the one for Lord of the Rings online, things like that. A lot of these different ones. And I know he was excited this week because the news had come out about EverQuest Next, and I think that there's probably some discussion about that in there as well. It literally dropped like maybe an hour before we started recording this, so I haven't even had a chance to check it out yet. But definitely, if you can, go over and check out The Unknown Emote.
Cool.
I think I hope it'll be something pretty cool, especially if you're into MMOs. I think you would really dig it.
So if they get to be popular, though, does that mean they're going to become the known emote? Or
that is possible.
Maybe.
That is possible.
Maybe possible.
Although still a terrible idea.
Doesn't mean it's not possible.
That's right. These two things are not mutually exclusive.
That's right.
So DK, what is your battle cry this week?
There isn't a gamer alive, TG in 3D, who hasn't dreamt of clutching the Master Sword from the Legend of Zelda series. And now it appears that they might actually have the chance to do that. Man at Arms, there's a YouTube video of Man at Arms making Link's Master Sword from the Legend of Zelda series, which I watched kind of in awe, because it was pretty cool to see a sword be made and then cut through, things like soda bottles, but also things from the game, hearts and other stuff. It was pretty cool. But
Wait,
anyway,
he
you
was
should
cleaving hearts with this? I gotta go watch this video.
not real
Yeah,
hearts.
if you've never checked this out, it's kind of a badass channel.
It's pretty
Like,
cool.
go ahead.
And so but what's interesting, I love these informative type of things. We as gamers always subject ourselves to these fantasy worlds and things that take place, but very rarely get to actually see how things, are made, or what actually is what it takes to make these things come to life. I do the segment Combat Facts on Game Trailers, also do Science of Games, exploring a lot of this type of stuff. So I always loved like the behind the scenes looks at what it would take to bring gaming into reality. And here you go, you got the Master Sword, and they take you step by step through the process of making it. It was a pretty fun and informative video, and the thing works. So watch out, whoever is the beholder of this thing is definitely going to be large and in charge. Next up, I need to contact these guys and see if they could help us make an epic battle axe. So we'll see if that can happen.
An excellent thought.
Thank you.
The first good one all episode.
Hey, now.
Hey, yeah, definitely. If you haven't checked out that channel, it's kind of badass. The guys, the first one I ever saw is he did a Sora's Keyblade, like the Keyblade from Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah.
And and talked about how trying to put like an edge on that blade, which is really not a blade, or like the way it's designed. They made the size from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for Michelangelo. Like they've done some really
excellent
cool
idea.
Cool things. Yeah, definitely. If you haven't checked it out, you should do yourself a favor and head over there.
Who?
Brent, what is your battle cry this week?
All right, so my battle cry this week. I should preface this by saying that I recently finished The Last of Us, and that in no way relates to my battle cry. But it's just an excuse to show some Last of Us footage while I get to what I'm actually going to say.
Okay.
Really?
Listen, I'm always looking out.
we need an
Always
excuse?
looking out. Okay.
We've
So
just shown it.
if you listen to the Axe Factor podcast this week, you know what I'm going to say already. But for everybody else in the EBA listening audience, I have a little bit of an announcement to make, and that is that about 6 weeks ago, I found out that my wife is pregnant.
Yay!
A little over a week ago.
Found out it
He
was
killed the
yours.
man that impregnated her.
A little over a week ago, my wife and I found out that we are going to have a little baby girl.
Yay!
And
They're
I could
very
not-
Brent. They are very fragile things. You cannot be all brutish and Brentish
Well,
and
listen, your children may be very fragile, but they don't
Well-
come from my stock. So,
okay. Did you say stock or cock? I'm sorry. What did you say?
Okay. So anyway,
I think either one.
I am. Ultimately, in this context, it's the same. But the point is this: I am super excited. I am just over the moon with this news, and she and I are both just equal parts terrified and really happy. So it's going to be really interesting. Our daughter's name is Zeely, and Zeely is going to be joining us in the land of independent breathing about January 26th next year.
How do you
like
spell
that.
Zeely?
Zeelie.
Nice.
I like it.
Thank you.
Well, congratulations again, man. We love you,
Thank
and
you so much,
we're
man.
really happy that the world is going to have another. Actually, no, I'm really scared. Actually, now that I just thought about that.
Most people have that reaction when they really think about it. They're like, "Wait a second,
Wait,
he's
what does this
procreating."
mean? Yes, no. So, well, congrats, man.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate
That
it.
is awesome. And I was just checking eBay, and right now, buy it now, new baby,
Yeah.
$2,700. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Not
I'm
the
just throwing that out
highest the
there.
market's ever been. You have
But
to.
that's
admit.
No, well, hey,
Hey.
it's 2013. What do you want? I mean, come on.
That's a new Xbox One and PS4, buddy.
That's true. That's very true. So
Just
no.
just put it in perspective.
And a few games. All right. Well, so no, that is phenomenal, buddy. I'm so happy for you and Can we say your wife's name, or can we?
Yeah, I think everybody knows.
Did you just?
I think everybody knows
for
my
you and
wife's name is Shelley.
Sorry, I just didn't know if if we were okay to say that. Anyway, but congratulations.
Don't you ever say her name!
No, sorry. All right, well, so DK, I believe you have our member battle cry this week.
I do. I've
why
got
don't you
our member
fucking
battle
read it?
cry, which is in reaction to the Fez fiasco, which there was a lot of comments and a couple of people who left the site. Apparently, they thought we were
I'm
biased.
surprised. I
Yeah.
didn't think anybody would chime in on this one.
We weren't biased at all. I thought we were very fair and just kind of just saying
At least
everyone
one person strongly disagrees with you.
strongly disagrees, but apparently they're not listening anymore. So there you go. But anyway,
that's their
this
problem.
member battle cry comes from Alexander Arts, and it goes a little something like this. Phil Fish and Marcus are both childish, or being childish. They both say whatever comes to mind, and I don't hold either of them in high regard. If they want to play on Twitter name calling, that's fine. And if they want to quit their jobs over it, that's their choice. I really think we're giving them way too much publicity by discussing it. And the reason why that's the member battle cry of the week is because it basically puts an end note and a cap on that whole thing. I think everyone's ready to just move on and let bygones be bygones and learn something. Like I said last week, hopefully we could learn to treat each other better from that whole situation and have a little bit more respect in the way that we communicate. And there you go. So
Well,
that's the
Tony
member
and I
battle cry of the week.
certainly
But
haven't,
duet.
Tony and
You
I
guys-
certainly haven't, but you know.
You have not, because you still do not communicate nicely to me after 203 episodes.
Hey,
and I
but
just
I could argue that that's
Hey, Daniel.
that the reason
Yeah.
we've made it 203 episodes is because we haven't communicated properly to you.
that's
Daniel.
true. Yes.
Fuck you, go kill yourself. Hey, so I do want to point out that I do think that it is actually kind of interesting that, that someone has to make this statement that we should not be discussing this anymore. Does anybody else not find that kind of ironic? Like,
I do.
Yeah.
I
look,
do
look,
too.
we all just need to quit talking about it. Well, shut up then. Well, no. I got to just point out we got to quit talking about it, okay?
But yeah, there's I mean, like, in whatever controversial situation that that develops, I mean, there's always that person who's saying, like, we shouldn't be talking about this because we're just feeding into it. Now, admittedly, that's legitimate. Like, mass shootings in some cases. I mean, like psychologists, FBI profilers, they're all pretty firmly on the record. They're like, yeah, the more the media talks about this, the more they're going to happen because the attention-seeking component is a psychological part of why these people do these things. So you probably shouldn't report on them as much as
Mass
you do.
game cancellations will have the same argument.
So anyway, in the effort of closing the door on this discussion, if that's what everybody really wants to do, I did put up another Your Take poll on this, and the results are somewhat interesting. I asked 2 questions of our audience, and this is what the Epic Battle Axe listeners had to say about this. The first question was, did Marcus Beer go too far in his criticism of Phil Fish? 31% of our listeners said yes, 69% said no. Then I asked the follow-up question, did Phil Fish overreact to Marcus Beer's comments? 10% said no, 90% said yes.
Okay.
So
How many votes?
overall, there have been almost 400.
Okay, yeah, so that's pretty legit.
So-
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think everybody sort of, I don't know. Everybody comes down on it, but I think the biggest point of it was basically the cancellation of the game, and I think everybody agrees that that was overacting. Like, I really don't know that. I think everybody agrees, or some people differ on like why it started, or if he had any validation in doing it, that sort of thing. But the fact that he canceled like this upcoming game because he couldn't figure out a way to fucking make it probably is is really the part where everybody I think is in agreement that it was overreacting.
I agree that, and I think that that's really kind of what makes it a news story. I mean, if this were just a flame war on Twitter between Marcus Beer and Phil Fish,
nobody'd care.
Okay. Now, admittedly, it's late July, August, so maybe people care because
That is true.
August,
That is true.
no news becomes news.
But
But we do have a bunch of good games coming out this month, so that's going to change. And then we have Gamescom
Hopefully
coming
so.
up and the next-gen consoles. So hopefully August will pick up. And
We have, I mean, there's plenty of games that we haven't found out about yet, but are no longer making content for their older games coming up this month
that's
too.
going to
So
be
keep
a lot
your eye
of
on
news.
that.
We'll do the rundown.
The real people who lost here were the people that were going to be working on Fez 2 that don't have jobs
That's true.
now.
That's true.
As one of our listeners pointed out, I don't have your name in front of me, but one of our commenters.
It was me.
I mean, didn't
pointed
Phil
that
Fish
out,
make it
and
all on his own?
That's
I mean, didn't he pretty much?
No, well, I mean,
that.
Polytran was. I mean, I don't. It wasn't a big company, but
I was being facetious.
I see. So anyway, but another good point raised by a member of the mighty Axe Head Army.
Yes.
Yep. All right, well, that is going to do it for this week's Skirmish. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us this week, and please join us once again next week when we will be mercilessly cleaving the fat from the gaming stories of the day. For Daniel Kaiser and Brent Adams, I am your host, Tony Grice, and remember, cry havoc, and go kill yourself.
Don't say that.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Make love, not war.
Go
make a
little
baby
babies.
in honor of Brent.
I've
and his...
already done that. All right, get on my fucking case.
No, I'm telling the audience should go do it now. I've got 3. And you know we're amassing an army here. We could defend this castle.
I'm not sure if your 3 children and my infant exactly amount to an army, but I respect the thought behind where you're going.
Yes, if we feed them properly.
Well,
Possibly.
this is true.
The like 15 illegitimate children I have floating around.
Yeah.
You know, we start to get into like a brigade or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the technical term is, but